Hello everyone, this is Defense Politics Asia, and this is the summary for the day of 401 to 501 to 502 for the 9th and the 10th of July. For the Ukraine war, or the special military operation in Ukraine, depending on which terminology that you prefer. And let's start off with muting my WhatsApp. In the southern front, we do not have any information of anything that happened over there. And moving on to the Zaporizhzhia Front. At the Zaporizhzhia Front, we have some information of the Ukrainian forces trying withdraw from Pyatikaki. And that happened on the 9th of July. And on the 10th, they tried to return. However, they got spotted immediately, and artillery fires shot on them, and they were immediately pulverized. And they had to whatever that is remaining and survive quickly retreat to their original positions. So the Ukrainians withdraw from Petikaki, and then the next day they return, and then they got bombarded. And then they run away again. So yeah, so that's what happened over at Petikaki, and that's all from the Kayamsky sector. Moving into the Orikhiv sector. At the Orikhiv sector, the Ukrainian forces continue their attack towards Robotine. This is Robotine, and they have already arrived at the first line of defense over at the northeast of Robotine. So fighting then happened on this main line over the 9th and the 10th. And on the 10th, information in the afternoon says that the Ukrainian forces mechanized brigade with 25 people with Bradley infantry fighting vehicles progressed half a kilometers into the defense of the 71st motorized rifle regiment. And then after that, there's an assault detachment from the 47th and from the 33rd mechanized brigade trying to attack the northeast as well. So there is a lot of fighting. Latest information suggests that the Russian forces actually counterattack later in the day. After the afternoon, the 2 p.m. report, the Russians actually counterattack and push back the Ukrainians. There is also information of Ukrainian reinforcement for one tank and several infantry fighting vehicles moving towards this sector over here, with the Ukrainians continue to try to reinforce the forces that was assaulting. There are also those that went to reinforce or try to progress in a different direction and then got hit. In the information coming from the Russian Defense Ministry and Remlin 21 actually go into detail, the pro-Russian source, saying that there's a Ukrainian force that of 4 Bradleys and 2 tanks did not work out. They managed to get spotted. They did not actually meet any Russian forces. They got spotted and then they got shelled and then suffered losses. And then whatever advance or operation they are doing was abandoned. And there's also information of fighting near Novodanilivka. The Russian Defense Ministry reported this, as well as near Malatomashka. Malatomashka is here, Novodanilivka is here. So there must be some kind of Ukrainian push from this area, and then they got spotted by maybe forward Russian forces, because Russian forces could actually go forward despite the front line that we are seeing now. And because this is actually a very, very huge territory. We're talking about a span of 20 kilometers in terms of this front line. So they can be anywhere, and then maybe some probing forces actually spotted them and whatnot. So there is fighting nearby to Malatomashka, although the front line actually is nowhere close to the Malatomashka. So the fighting must be somewhere nearer here, with the Russian forces actually move into towards the Malatomashka region. Moving on from the Orikhiv sector, so the fighting is still ongoing on the front line, with some information saying that the Ukrainian forces got pushed back a bit. So we shall continue to see if the Ukrainians can continue to hit on this first line of defense. I just want to tell those that cannot agree. As you can see, this is the first line of defense, and we are now at the first line of defense. It's over here. So first line of defense actually is over here at Robotine. The Ukrainians have arrived at the first line. Moving on at the Okhyapole sector, the previous information of the probing at Dorozyanka and Mafopil is no longer being reported. Nothing happened over at the Huyakule sector. Moving into the Velika Novosilka sector. Velika Novosilka is here. The Ukrainian forces launched multiple attacks, mainly from to the north of Uruzhaine, south of Rifnopil, in the area of Rifnopil as well, and from Levadne towards Priyotne. However, latest information suggests from Raiba that the mapping based on the pro-Russian source suggests that the Ukrainian forces has been pushed back to the river line, and the front line has go back to the river, which means that the previous Ukrainian progress has been eliminated. So the Russians have actually managed to push back in this area here. The one from Levadne towards Priyotne is actually a probing attack, and then there was also attempted assault near Rifnopil that was thwarted before they are even managed to meet with Russian forces, if I think. Advanced unit uncovered and eliminated. So there's actually some kind of fighting actually. There's actually two pieces of information. One from the summary, their SITREP, and then the other one is actually by their Vostok group of forces. And the Vostok group of forces, the one that they report suggests that they were fighting. The Russian ones, the Russian Defense Ministry's main report says that they were repelled by artillery. So on the 9th, it was a probing. On the 10th, it was an attack. So that's what happened. There's reinforcement reported at Rifnopil and also at Makarivka. According to pro-Russian sources, the reinforcements are the 35th Brigade Marines of the Ukrainian Navy. So they are Marines fighting on the land. So yeah, but it's okay, because US Marines also fight in the desert. So the one fighting on the north of Uruzhaine now is also reported by the Russian Defense Ministry. So that's all from the Velika Novosilka sector. Moving into the Donetsk Front, this is the Donetsk Front. At the Donetsk Front, there's nothing over at the Voleda region. Over at the Novomihailivka, there is fighting reported at Novomihailivka, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry. The Ukrainians hold the positions over at Novomihailivka. They have some lines over here, and the Russians are attacking towards Novomihailivka. So ongoing. Over at the Marinka, the town of Marinka or village of Marinka or flattened ground of Marinka, there's fighting reported over here. The Russian Defense Ministry said that they were attacked by the Ukrainian forces. However, the Ukrainian Defense Ministry said that they are attacked by the Russian forces. And they continue to report this on the 10th. This is basically a daily thing. They always say that the Russians are attacking over at Marinka, despite we actually know what does it look like. There is fighting reported at near Krasna Horivka, according to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry, on the 10th of July. So the Russians are allegedly, maybe they are trying to push back the Ukrainian salients that were created in the Ukrainian offensive operations a few weeks ago. Moving on from the Donetsk Front, we move into the Avdiivka Front. So this is Avdiivka city, north of Donetsk city. At Avdiivka, we have a lot of Ukrainian operations reported over this region here. On the western part of Avdiivka, we have fighting reported at Nevelsky, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, on the 10th, Povomaisky on the 9th, Opitny on the 9th, and then Vodian on the 10th, which suggests that and also one more near Zheveny on the 9th. So which means that there's a Ukrainian force, Ukrainian attack across the entire front line, across the entire front, where the Russians are holding the line. And but then there is this interesting situation. Previously, we have reported that the Ukrainian forces actually managed to capture this stronghold over here, and this stronghold now is in doubt. We have no idea who is actually in control of this, because based on the latest information from Raiba, the Russian forces have counterattacked and managed to capture all the way to the south of Zheveny. And if they are able to progress to this point, which means this stronghold here has been captured by the Russian forces. So now we are waiting for more information to see whether we can corroborate this information about this counterattack that get them to the outskirts of Zheveny. Because previously what we get is that the Ukrainians actually launched the offensive, and they got much closer to Vodian than they ever done for months. And then suddenly the Russians are here. So we do not know what exactly is happening. There's some kind of parallel universe going on. So we shall see how this goes. Moving on to the eastern part of Avdiivka, there is still fighting reported at Avdiivka, near Avdiivka city. Most likely is from the east, from Kutabalka, according to previous informations. And we have fighting reported at the Avdiivka dachas. So the dachas are here. These are the dachas, something like holiday or summer homes over here. So the Russian forces have expanded their control over Vasily. Previously, the Ukrainians have actually go all the way here, putting a lot of pressure on the Russians. The Russians have counterattacked and actually expanded their buffer zone. They have expanded their buffer zone, and in fact, they even go into the offensive to hit into Ukrainian-controlled dachas on the north of Avdiivka. So, interesting development over here in the northern part of Avdiivka. And not just in the south of Krasnohorivka that the Russians are actually making all these moves, but they are also attacking the north. And according to the mappings from pro-Russian sources, the Russian forces have kind of expanded their control in the north, despite that the Ukrainians still have a lot of control over on the western part of Krasnohorivka. So we shall continue to monitor to see how this Avdiivka, the battle of Avdiivka, develops over the next week or two. Moving on, we do not have anything over the New York front. Moving into the Bakhmut front. At the Bakhmut front, we have fighting reported continuing at Klishchiivka. On the 9th, the Russian forces continue to hold positions and they managed to secure the buffer zone around Klishchiivka, the high ground on the western part of Klishchiivka. And the Ukrainian forces on the 10th tried again to attack the Russian forces. And so far, they did not manage to break through, with the Ukrainians continue to push to capture this entire high ground region that the Russians currently is holding, which will provide the Ukrainians fire control over the entire village of Klishchiivka. Further up north, in the northern flank of the Bakhmut front, we have fighting reported at Bakhmut. The Ukrainian forces eliminated the Russian ability. Previously, I said that the Russians have managed to counterattack and create some buffer at Bakhmut. This has entirely been wiped out by the Ukrainians in a massive offensive by the Ukrainians, and they have entered Bakhmut. Fighting is currently ongoing within Bakhmut. So we shall see how this goes. As I mentioned many times before, Bakhmut is very important strategically for the Russians. So they must send reinforcement to make sure that they hold the village. If not, the fall of Bakhmut would mean great Ukrainian success in the northern part, as this strategic city allows the Ukrainians to go for Paraskovievka towards Pihorodny, cut off the main roads all across the north of Bakhmut, and then stranded all the Russian forces that is currently over at the Dubovo-Vasilivka region. Moving on, there is still fighting reported in the area of Dubovo-Vasilivka. According to the Ukrainian Defense Ministry on the 9th, they say that the Russians are attacking in the area of Dubovo-Vasilivka. On the 10th, then they say that the fighting is moving towards Kryhorivka. They say repel attack near the settlement of Kryhorivka. So, which means that the Russian forces is pushing out from in this direction. Yeah, so that is the kind of situation we are looking at, with the Ukrainians attacking Bakhmut and the Russians ignoring it and fighting elsewhere. So, yeah, it's like asking for encirclement. Moving on into the Siversk Front. At the Siversk Front, there is fighting reported at Rozdolivka or northwest of Yakovlivka. The Ukrainian forces from Rozdolivka managed to progress southeast of the settlement and managed to capture grounds northwest of Yakovlivka. The Ukrainian forces pushed the Russians back, and this is actually pretty threatening, I would say, with this progress in this region here in the south of the Siversk Front. And then again, the Russians seems to ignore it, and they went on an offensive against Sperne. So fighting is reported in the north and south of Sperne. Information coming from Surya maps and then in the north and the south. And with this action, it threatens a pincer and the encirclement of Ukrainian forces at Sperne. This forced the Ukrainian forces to actually withdraw based on the information from Kremlin 21, and the Ukrainian forces allegedly withdraw from this settlement. Fighting was reported on the 9th, according to the Russian Defense Ministry, where the Ukrainians were attacking the Russian positions. Maybe they are trying to hold back the Russian offensive, and the Russians say that it's a Ukrainian attack. So the current assessment is that Sperne has been captured by the Russian forces. However, this is not corroborated by pro-Ukrainian sources, so take this with a pinch of salt. It could actually be not true. It's just that the Ukrainian Defense Ministry literally said they are fighting Russian forces west of Sperne. So Sperne is here, west of Sperne is here, so which means the Ukrainians are currently being pushed out of Sperne. Further up north, over at Bilohorivka, we still continue to have reports from the Russian Defense Ministry that the Ukrainians are on the offensive over at Bilohorivka on the 9th. So not exactly sure what is exactly happening over here, because they have been reported to be attacking for so many times on so many days, and I don't really see any information coming out from that. It's just like Marinka. Moving into the Kreminna Front. At the Kreminna Front, the Russian forces major offensive over towards Toske, towards Yampolivka, to the west of Dibrova, and within the Serebranske forestry. This comes right in the middle of Ukrainians' own offensive in the region, where they launched probing attack and small-scale operations, or some of them are bigger, across the entire front of Kreminna, reaching all the way north to Kamenzinivka. So the Ukraine offensive is much bigger in terms of the front line. But the Russians kind of just ignore it and fight fire with fire. Information at the Serebranske forestry is coming from the Ryba, the pro-Russian source, on the 9th, and on the 10th is reported by Deep State UA, the pro-Ukrainian source. And the Russian Defense Ministry, however, say that the Ukrainians have probing attacks within the Serebranske forestry on the 9th. South of Kuzmine, the Russian Defense Ministry reported on the 10th that the Ukrainian forces attacked Kuzmine, or at least in the direction of Kuzmine. So the Russians are currently pushing this way, and the Ukrainians are trying to reach this area here. So maybe the Ukrainians can later cut off the from the rear, which is actually not a bad idea, but yeah, they cannot get through. They have been trying for a very, very long time. On the western part of Dibrova, there is fighting reported on the 10th. Both sides, Surya Maps and the Russian Defense Ministry both claims different things. Surya Maps claims that the Russians have made progress. So previously the front line was actually along the road and much nearer to Dibrova. The Russian forces have since captured more grounds over in this region here in their offensive towards Toske. In the latest rumor is that the Russian forces is barely 500 meters from Toske itself. The Russian Defense Ministry. Okay, so we just said that. Okay, so over at the Toske region, we have fighting reported from the 9th, the 10th, and the 11th. On the 11th, the information is actually 300 to 400 meters. This is a rumor coming from the pro-Russian source, Kremlin 21. Previously, there was fighting reported at Toske on the 9th, reported by the Russian Defense Ministry, claiming that the Ukrainians are attacking. However, Ryba, the pro-Russian source, contradicted the information entirely, saying that the Russians are actually conducting major offensive within the forestry region and in the area of Toske. They say that the fighting in areas with low visibility, the Russian forces are able to knock out the Ukrainians from their strongholds. And so this is happening. And then on the 10th, this is echoed by Surya Maps. So we shall continue to monitor this offensive. The Russian offensive also seems to have reached at Yampolivka, according to the mapping by Ryba, the pro-Russian source. The Russian Defense Ministry on the 10th say that the Ukrainians are attacking. Active action, blah, 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 blah. So they are actually on the offensive. Wrong color. So the offensive continues on the 10th of July. So towards Yampolivka. And that's all from the Kreminna Front. There is some reinforcement reported at Liman, according to Ryba, the pro-Russian source. And this reinforcement to the Liman region is actually quite huge. Reportedly is 2,600 people on 50 armored vehicles, which is called Wolverine, the armored vehicles, and 20 fighting vehicles called Valuk, as well as 5 BTR force, which is part of which form the reserve in the Liman region. So there is a massive Ukrainian force over in the Liman area, and this is likely to either launch a major offensive against the Russians, or they might actually to help out with the defense operations against the Russian push that is currently, putting a lot of pressure on the Ukrainian side. Further up north, we have fighting reported by the Russian Defense Ministry of the Ukrainian attacking at Nevsky on the 9th, Novovodyan on the 9th, and also Kamenzynivka on the 10th. Information all coming from the Russian Defense Ministry. And moving on to the Svatove Front. This is Svatove. At the Svatove Front, we have fighting reported at Novoselivsky. Fighting is reported south of Novoselivsky according to Ryba on the 9th, and on the 10th, this is acknowledged by pro-Ukrainian source, Deep State UA. So this is corroboration. Pro-Russian source say one thing, then the pro-Ukrainian source acknowledge it and corroborated the information. Fighting is currently within the Novoselivsky, according to Ryba, and this is actually an acknowledgement of the previous information that we have already reported, that the Russian forces have entered into Novoselivsky. However, the Russian Defense Ministry on the 10th reported that the Ukrainians actually tried to counterattack against the Russians, but did not work out. So the current situation is this: the Russian forces currently have some kind of semi-encirclement of the Ukrainian forces within the Novoselivsky region, especially in the south. They are actively trying to push into the village, and they are also pushing from the east towards the west direction. So the Ukrainian forces currently is trying very hard to hold the position, and they are in danger of being encircled if the Russians continue to push to the rear, and then that could encircle the Ukrainian forces at the Novoselivsky. So moving on into the Kupyansk region, there's no fighting being reported in the Kupyansk Front. This is the Kupyansk Front. Kupyansk is here. This is Kupyansk. However, we have yet another information coming from pro-Russian sources reporting massive reinforcement at Kupyansk. So 2,800 people. So this is actually equivalent to the one at the Liman. In this region, they have 94 Max Pro being spotted with 4 Grad MLRS, multiple launch rocket system, 25 field artillery and mortars arriving at Kupyansk, Holubivka, which is here, and Kucherivka. So the Ukrainian forces have reinforced into this region here. They move into Holubivka, Kucherivka, and also in the majority of them probably at Kupyansk. So the Ukrainian forces currently is gathering a massive force. With Max Pro, with artillery, I'm not sure if this is going to be an offensive force, because you need tanks. Maybe they already have tanks in this region, so we shall continue to see. I think the Ukrainians are just going to try something new in this region here, with focus on Kupyansk and Liman. Maybe they want to do some major push, because the Zaporizhzhia region seems to be pretty difficult. So maybe they want to try something different. I'm not too sure. There's nothing over at the Kharkiv front, and there's also nothing major, in my opinion, across the border between Ukraine and Russia. And that's it for the summary for the day of 501 to 502. Do press the like button, subscribe, share this with your friends, family, contacts, and social media. Just spam it everywhere. Because if you want to help DPA to continue to keep this reporting ongoing, we need to have more views. The current views numbers are a bit low. That's why we want to do more. And if you think that there's something that I'm not doing well, do comment below. Let me know. I do read the comments as much as I can, because yeah, I have no idea why people is not watching as much as they used to. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next update.